looking at.
How you doing
We
today?
are going to
We're good?
good to go.
All right.
I'd like to call to order the April 20th meeting of the Electric Services Assessment Steering Committee meeting. This will be our final meeting for this assessment committee.
We hope.
First of all, I'd like to call the roll, and Dr. Miller will be with us when he arrives. Go ahead.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Turpin?
Here.
Mr. Shanks?
Here.
Mr. Gilstrap?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
We are going to take comments from the public now, and then we're going to have comments on each of the recommendations. We're going to go over them again as they were, as we decided upon them last Monday, and then we're going to vote on all the recommendations at one time, and that a formal vote to recommend those to City Council for their adoption and their consideration. First of all, are there any comments from the public at this time? Yes, sir.
25 Old Halifax Road, represents SouthsideCentral.com. As a utility customer and as a member of the media, I just want to say thank you very much for your service and what you've done with the hard work on this. It's been a hard decision to make, it's been hard to come by, but the most important thing that these meetings have came to me is I've learned the electric business a lot more, and I think a lot of the citizens of Danville have as well too. And for that, I want to thank Mr. King, all the way down to everybody in Danville Utilities, including Mr. Gray there, for teaching me, Southside Central, and Danville Utilities customers about how electric systems work. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Anyone else have any comments?
Hey there.
We are now going to begin a review of the recommendations, and
It's done.
Ms. Walker, are you going to help us lead this discussion?
Yes, sir. I'll
You
be happy
have you have recommendation sheets. They are landscaped, and we're going to go over each one of those, and then we're going to see if everybody's happy with the language, and then we're going to vote on it. Ms. Walker, please.
Yes, sir. You have in front of you the 7 recommendations that you offered last week. We took those recommendations and we created a table from it so that each one could be represented by a little bit of background and a little bit of vision, and then specific strategies that will be developed to help you move toward achieving that recommendation. So let's look at recommendation A, just as an example. This is the one where it is to offer the industry an option to source its own power, with Danville serving as a transport similar to the gas model currently in place. In a column that says current situation, we want to talk about what's currently going on. This gives you history on one page, right there. Very briefly, here's the current history. Why do you want to make a change from the current history to something you see in the future? That's the gap. What's missing? And then what does the future look like if you make this change? Then under indicators and measurable objectives, sometimes they'll be more applicable than others, but in this case, you're looking for, if we achieve this, how do we know? What's the measure that will indicate we have achieved it? And so that's where you would fill that section out. And then under activities or strategies, these are the steps you need to take in order to achieve or get to the recommendation. Person responsible, right now it lists an office, and that may be acceptable, I'm sure. Sometimes in offices there are just a very few people, but it's usually more important or more impactful if there's actually a person's name there, because then you're actually looking to that person for a report or for leadership. We also see in the timeline, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Gray for helping to add a few details, you know, kind of looking at some possible dates. These are just recommendations. Usually, instead of something like 6 months, I would recommend to you that you actually put a month and a year, because 6 months from May is different than 6 months in April. So I would suggest that you actually will fill it in if you think that's right, and we'll say October 2015. And then the budget, should we make assumptions that those are just the best estimates right now? Okay. So you'll see that on each one of these. So that gives you an idea of the chart. Do you like the format? Think it'll work?
It's fine.
Okay. Okay. So on recommendation A, let's start, if you would, by let's looking at the wording, and we are projecting it here, and Jenny is helping us to make sure that we modify as we go, that we make revisions. So do you have any statements or questions related to the wording of recommendation A? Any changes?
I've got some questions about the revenue neutral, but maybe that's can be worked out when we work out the details. When I meant revenue neutral, I meant revenue neutral for the city and remaining customers that's on the system.
For the city and remaining customers?
That would be on the city system.
Okay. So, Jenny, we'll add that if that's okay. If y'all are comfortable with that statement, revenue neutral for the city and remaining customers, that's easy to add into that section. And we're making notes as we go. Dr. Miller?
Yeah, question, measurable objectives report a high level, 100% high level of satisfaction with the electricity service provider. It means if they choose somebody else, what does that exactly mean? And the city of Danville. We're going to have very little control if they choose somebody else. I mean, is that what that means? I'm trying to understand what that means. Report a high level of satisfaction with the electricity service provider.
That's right. And you may use that, and you may want to take that piece out
That's
about
nothing
the service
we
provider.
can't control that.
Right.
I mean, the city of Danville, if they go with AEP and AEP doubles their rates, we have no control over that.
So do you want to take out with the electricity service provider and just leave? Your goal is the 100% sort of satisfaction with the city of Danville. And that may never be achieved,
That'll
but that
never
is
be
always
achieved.
the goal.
I don't know, I still have to reword that.
I would say, in this case, the city of Danville is acting as the distributor. We're not providing transmission services. We're acting as a distributor.
Right.
So we would want them to report a high level of satisfaction with the city of Danville and its its distribution
That's
services.
better, because we can control that. We can't do a darn thing about Dominion or Appalachian Power.
Jenny, thank you.
Could we not just put a period after the word satisfaction and scratch the
You
rest?
could.
You could, but it's also good to know what you're measuring. And in this case, you're measuring the distribution services.
Yeah.
So, which do you prefer? We can add that in with the City of Danville's distribution services, or we can put a period. Which is your preference? All right, we'll add it. This is some growing document. It'll change. Now let's go back to
They
the
may not be happy with our garbage service.
Say it one more
They
time.
may not be happy with our garbage
Yeah,
service.
with our electricity's
You know.
transmission.
Garbage service.
Garbage. I hear it. It's a barrier, a sound barrier in here. Yes.
I think adding the distribution services to the language makes it clear.
All right, and if you're going to do that, you need to go to the recommendation A. First sentence starts with offer industry an option.
Okay,
The word transport is in that sentence,
right there.
which is, we're trying to get rid of that
Okay.
What word do you want to
terminology.
replace it with?
Distribution, I
Distribution.
believe, is what we decided better describes the activity the city's going to provide.
Yeah, we're the distributor.
Distribution, not transport.
Good,
So we would serve as the distributor.
as the distributor.
Right.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Wait, go back, not there.
Industry,
All right, it's offer industry an option to source its power with Danville, serving as the distributor. Yes,
Right.
and then, right, we'll add the I later.
Then you can say comma, similar to the gas model
That's
currently in
right.
place, which is what we are, a distributor in that model.
That's right, click right there and add the I.
Comma
Add a
after
comma after the
distributor.
R. And I want to really thank Jenny. It's awfully hard to be editing in the public's eye.
It is.
So thank you so much for doing this. And that way I don't have to do it while I'm trying to ask questions. So it's good. Mr. Turner.
Under the person in office responsible, I think that would be Danville utility staff / rate consultant, not the power supply consultant.
And this is which consultant?
Rate
Rate
consultant.
Rate consultant on this one.
Yeah, we are not providing power sourcing consulting services as part of this.
Are you comfortable with 6 months? Do you want to put in a month? You just like 6 months?
I don't know.
I'm asking,
do
because
that 6
when you open this packet in June and you see 6
done by
months, does
have
that
done
mean
by
December?
October.
Or are you
Because of
still
90
focused
okay, for
on
90 days
October or
choice.
November? So would you be willing to put a month in there?
Well, I prefer 6 months since it's got to be approved by 2 bodies, and we don't know how fast that's going to be.
Okay, so maybe come back after its approval or after it's vetted and then
Put a
add
date
in the appropriate time.
I think we need to have as a deadline for this particular item the end of 2015.
So December 2015?
Yes. I think we should shoot for that. I think it would demonstrate a real concern for our industrial customers in trying to not kick this can down the road, but absolutely attack this issue and do
And be
something
held
about it.
accountable?
I don't know if
And that'll push us.
December's, they've got to know the facts on it to make their arrangements if they're able to do so by the beginning of next year. So December's a little too late for them to know the facts.
I
What
think
would you suggest?
November.
I agree with,
I agree
So
too.
you
My
want to
colleague
push
here.
it up further?
yeah,
Okay.
All right, give us a month, just because. it's
October.
October. Can we live with October?
Sure.
which is 6 months.
September.
6 months.
Mr. Gilstrap, you good with that?
No, wait, we got,
I
again,
go
this
back
hasn't
to
been
what I
passed
said
yet.
originally, that depends
Right.
on
Got the
how
council
soon
to-
the 2
That's
governing
what
bodies
they-
can can act on it. Joe, how soon can it be on the agenda?
Take 60 days.
To be on the first meeting in May for the city council.
And for the utility
So it's
commission?
Oh, well, we can move right ahead
That's
on it.
this coming Monday.
It's on the April,
We're going to move right on it. I mean, the utility commission
So let's say
is
November, give it 6
equipped to handle this kind of, to start these discussions.
I'm good with that.
But Jason and his staff are in contact with these people, and
Well, how about November? Because the earliest it can be is May, that we get it. So June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 6 months.
It's your timeline.
And we haven't
How about
convinced
we
the rest
just
of the
put
council either.
October/November, and then we'll see which one you hit.
I can live with
that's
either
fine.
one.
live with that?
I mean, that's not.
That's fine.
We're,
That many days
we,
difference.
She's been doing
The
this
main thing
a
is
long
you're saying,
time.
and then the budget itself, any comments? Because I'm not so sure that you know right now. We're just estimating.
That's an estimate.
Um,
Get hung
Yes,
up on
sir.
that.
Let's clarify what we're asking by November.
You look under strategies. just develop a distribution rate similar to the gas distribution rate that covers customer demand?
Well, there's also going to need to be
They gotta secure their
a criteria for exiting the system. It's not just setting up the rate. There is going to need to be a severance of the current agreement. That's
So-
going to have to be worked out as well.
So you really need a plan for exiting the system. So let's add that, right, develop a plan for exiting
For exiting,
the system.
and similarly,
Current
there'll
system,
need to
that's
be a
good.
plan for entering back in the system, if they so choose.
All those are details that will be worked out in the rate, I think.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, exiting
So
and
we
returning
aren't
to the
saying
system.
by October that all of our industrial customers will be make a decision of which they want to do.
Be offered the option.
Be offered the option by October.
So that means you've got a plan established, with the criteria.
Yeah, that's the other thing that needs to be specified is the criteria.
That would
What
be,
industries?
that would be done with the rate consultant, the utility commission and rate consultant, all that would be written into the
Built
rate.
into the rate.
The schedule, that would require at least one ordinance reading by council, it might be two,
Right.
Now, council is going to have to approve this rate change.
right,
Right. That is council's sole authority. They have to do that.
right.
So they have to take a month for that.
Can I jump in here? I'm having a little problem on the logistics side. How is it, okay, we come up with this transportation or distribution rate. In the meantime, the other provider needs to be running numbers on what he has to offer. So how does that get coordinated, and is November, I mean, it seems like that November deadline may not be realistic to have them have that worked out too.
I'm assuming that once the rate is in place, the customer who decides to go with this rate would be working with their
Directly with that
provider.
provider.
And they may, for budgeting purposes, want to have done that by the end of the year, but they could do that at any time they wanted.
They could, that, I would speculate that they've already begun that process.
Sure. And to say that they may not necessarily go with another supplier outright. There may be a situation where we would buy that power for them.
No.
Nope.
No,
I would suggest we not serve
we're not going to
as
arrange.
their,
Nope.
No.
No, sir.
They're going to go out on their own. We're not going to get in the middle of it.
If we're going to arrange it, they buy it from us.
They would go to an aggregator.
We got middleman
and they
fee.
would do all their power arrangements.
Right. We're just going to pick it up at the gate.
Yeah.
Pick
if
it
we're
up at the-
following the gas example, we're not out securing the supply.
So we don't really have any part in that negotiation.
Nope.
Right.
So therefore, it's going to speed the process up because once,
We're
Because
actually
they're gonna-
opening up our city to competition, the
Right.
free market.
for the industrial.
Which, by the way, the current situation does not explain adequately that current situation, which is there's no option for securing alternate electricity service providers. I think that's what you were trying to
Right.
say.
Alternative.
So how far, I'm sorry, did you get that squared?
Almost.
All right. So
Well, the next question I had was, let's say the industry goes out and obtains another supplier. Then how far ahead of time does the city purchase its blocks? And what ensures us of being able to cover it if that industry chooses to come back? What kind of lag does there need to be for us to go out? I mean, I know there's some blocks we purchase on the market there's some blocks we purchase at auctions way ahead of time.
And some of our blocks go out to 2020. I think the furthest one does, and those costs would have to be offset by other customer classes.
Mr. Shanks, would that be part of what Mr. Donahue was speaking of around arranging the criteria for exiting and re-entering a system? So those are going to be some detailed discussions that will be coming back to the commission. Okay.
And I would just, back to that current situation, I would say there's no option for industrial customers to secure alternate electricity providers.
We're going to start it. We're going to start a new one.
You're good, keep going. Industrial customers to secure. Alternate electricity, let's just call it sources.
Sources, and take out the rest of that line.
Take out the rest.
Okay. And you're going to see some other edits you're going to want to make that are more specific, and you may want to add some things. So feel free to write, and then we'll add those as we move on. Right now, you're at a point on recommendation A where your recommendation is stated, where you've identified some of the issues. You've put in a timeline, and you've put in people responsible. Are you good? Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's look at B. B has to do with the power supply consultant and the criteria. You've got two different pieces within this one related to the development of a plan to reduce transmission and congestion and mitigation charges, and B, to assist in the planning and purchase of power on the open market. So make sure the wording is like you want it. Yes, Mr. Shanks.
I still have concerns about not making sure that the power supply consultant is specifically unrelated to AMP Ohio. I'd like to, as a recommendation from this group, and recommend that this power supply consultant be a consultant that is not closely tied to AMP Ohio.
Under indicators, the first
I
bullet.
think that's covered down there in indicators.
I just got this sheet. Where is it?
Under indicators, the consultant is,
Not
it
closely
should be
related,
selected, who is not closely related to AMP or any power generator. So you might want to reword that.
So let's talk
I'd
about
like to take that word
scenarios.
closely and just say related.
Yeah. So let's talk a couple of scenarios to make sure they understand what we mean. So let's say that we have the solicitation is out on a consultant who has previously advised Cleveland, which is a member of AMP Ohio. Would that be acceptable?
Personally, I wouldn't think so.
So that means not
you used
related.
the word
and that's important, because if we use not related, that draws basically a very clear, crisp deciding line for you all.
So what you're saying is that nobody that has ever used a member of AMP is disqualified.
Correct. Who has ever advised a member of AMP would be
A
disqualified.
member of
Is that going to be feasible?
I don't think
And that is
that's
going to be, that is really going to narrow the field, because there are lots of members in AMP.
a consultant could recommend and advise a member of AMP, but not be connected to AMP. And
So if we were to say not affiliated or having had prior consulting
Yes,
contracts to AMP, would that be acceptable
yes,
With AMP,
to AMP.
with AMP?
not AMP's membership, the individual members, but AMP, the organization.
Right.
And you draw a timeline on that. What if it was 5 years ago? They're not doing their consulting.
Well, and the second bullet kind of helps with that if the utility commission is involved in hiring that consultant.
All right, let's go back to the first indicator, though. A consultant who is not affiliated or had prior consulting contracts. Do you want that frame?
Right.
Or had prior consulting
To AMP, period.
Prior consulting contracts with
Yeah.
AMP.
Okay, now, do we want to continue to include or any power generator in there?
I think not.
No.
All right, let's take
know
out
who's
the end of
that
that.
can
All right, so now it says consultant who is not affiliated with or had prior consulting contracts with AMP. Utilities Commission is involved in the selection of the consultant and plans are prepared and approved. Okay,
That's much better.
good, save often.
Timeline? We want to establish a timeline?
We are going to establish a timeline.
Can we do
Right
that in 1
now,
month?
are you looking at the very first one, select power supply consulting firm? It says it in 1 month. So what is that month?
Let me ask Jason, is this going to be on the agenda for the meeting next Monday for the Utility Commission?
No, it's not, but we can put it on for May.
Well,
So give yourself 2 months.
we got to have 2 months.
Well, you gotta,
Council does not have to act on this?
Technically, no.
It's a staff item.
Okay.
We've already issued a RFP, we've already solicited responses, they just haven't been evaluated.
When you say that
Probably
the,
3 months. to be ready.
again, we're filling in what some of these words mean in some of these sentences, these statements have been made. Utility Commission is involved in the selection of the consultant. What does that mean to the group? Does that mean that the Utility Commission is going to interview 2 candidates that the staff pick, or are we going to have a consultation with staff? And what does that mean to you all here? Or do you have an opinion about what that means?
well, I have an opinion.
Please.
I would encourage there be at least one member of the Utility Commission involved on the interview staff, and maybe 2. I mean, I'm open to suggestions, but at least 1.
Are you all planning on calling these people, calling in finalists for an interview, face to face? Or was that your
If needed,
game plan?
we could have,
That's
changed it to
typical.
yeah.
Excuse me?
That is normally done.
That's,
Change that.
So
And-
how long realistically do you
Yeah,
think it'll
but
take?
see right
A month,
now,
2 months?
commission.
Yeah, I would say we could do it in a month.
You think you can do it for a month once this is passed?
And do you ever do just web interviews?
We could do a conference call or WebEx. Or,
Yeah, you could do a camera-assisted WebEx, works
Do you
very
want
well.
to add a number into that statement where it says at least so many utility commissioners are involved in the selection, or you want to leave it open?
I would say we'd be happy for the entire Utility Commission to be involved. If the commission chooses to send a delegate or have a delegate involved in the,
we can work that out
All
at
right,
Utility Commission
so we're going to
meeting
leave
next
that
week.
here. Then let's put a timeline. What month do you want to add in here? Instead of 1 month?
I say 2.
We've already got 2, we got 2 in there, Martha.
All right, got 2?
Yeah.
the May Utility Commission meeting is early, early.
We can do it in 2.
So
All right.
Now,
Thinking
2 months
June.
is fine. Let me ask you a question on $50,000. Is that feasible? That seems pretty low to me for a consultant.
depends on the amount of work. They're billed based on the hour, and once you give them a scope of work, then they give you how many hours they think it'll take to complete that work.
So you're paying for that out of your present budget?
Two
When do you
months. Do you want to put an actual month? Is this a July?
2 months is fine.
2 months is
Just
fine.
put
Now, what about the timeline for them to actually make recommendations? That's the most important timeline. What would you expect,
I
Jason?
think they'll have to tell us that.
Yeah.
So we'll come
I
back
would
and
defer
build
to
that.
them.
They won't know that scope of the work we want.
Right.
They can't give you a time frame.
The recommendation is to hire.
Recommendations
The
in this
action here is
case
to hire.
This is to
is
hire.
the recommendations for change, right? For rates. I mean,
Well-
supply consultant.
To make recommendations on our power supply portfolio.
And this would be coming from the consultant? Okay.
So if you would add in the make recommendations block under timeline, just to be determined.
Right. And this
I
would
just
be the
don't want city
consultant.
council to say, come up and say, well, okay, so how long is it going to take?
if we're saying 2 months, we're talking June.
To hire, but then they're gonna wanna know when they're gonna get a recommendation.
consultant.
You need to say to be determined, let's put it on the paper.
Okay.
I support that. I just don't want you to get
All right, so
caught.
look at this. We've got, and again, we're going to be building this out as you go. So recommendation B, power supply consultant is going to be hired to do certain things, and the recommendation on to hire that consulting firm is going to be made within 2 months. All right, you're good?
Good.
Ready? All right, let's move on to C then. This one is about the annual coincidental peak demand. So take a look at C. It's a little bit different, not as fast. Timeline.
With regard to activities, I feel like that part of this plan would be incorporating a more, and it's been done somewhat, but a strategic plan to help isolate. We've already, for instance, we've already talked to industries about the peak shaving during that period, but there are other things, businesses and other schools, other things that can be looked into and considered as part of that goal of reducing the peak demand. I'd like to see that included, some language in the activity/strategies to include that. Including, I think there are ways that the city can make the public, meaning residential customers, more aware. We've kind of started it, but I think there's a whole lot of work that can be done that can get the whole community involved in working both on that, and I guess it's probably the next one. No.
Is this the education piece for the consumer, for the public?
But I think it's more than just education. I think
Yeah, I do too.
we have to incentivize them. Just like industry is incentivized, I think we have.
Well, and not only that, but for instance, we saw in the newspaper, I think this weekend, the amount of monthly payment the schools are paying for electricity.
Yeah.
Well, was it today? Well, during the cold spells that we had our peak demand, the schools were closed. I got a feeling there's a huge chunk of change with a plan, a strategic plan that will help. I mean, if there are thermostats that are lowered during that period, I mean, the schools are one of the biggest users. But I mean, there are other things that I think can be done. A real strategic plan could include that would find sources like that that actually have a tremendous impact, could have a tremendous impact.
How would you word that, Mr.
I don't know.
Okay. All right, so is it incentives? Is it education? Awareness, you start with awareness usually when you're trying to change behavior. So where would you like to start this?
Well, it starts with education,
Okay.
but it moves into community involvement in terms of the residential customers, incentives in terms of the commercial customers.
Oh,
And there already is.
I disagree. I think, I participated in residential load management 20 years ago as a residential customer.
I do that every day. I do it especially during those periods, but I'm not sure, are you
No, I
talking
mean,
about incentives?
I'm talking about, I was incentivized, okay? My heat pump was hooked up on the grid. My heat pump was throttled back in times of coincident demand issues. I was provided a rebate to participate in that. And that's done very actively down in North Carolina right now.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. Number one, my incentive would be to be a team player and hopefully help keep my rates down in the future as a residential customer. And the other thing is, if we do incentives, then there's going to have to be a offset to all customers that's going to make it revenue neutral. Just like the time of day policy that we have.
I paid to install the device.
Are you talking about rates or devices?
I'm talking about.
You're talking about incentives for devices.
I'm talking about incentives for residential energy load management. Just like we have incentives for industrial customers to participate.
All right, do you mean that their rate is going to vary based on that incentive, or there's going to be, because if the rate varies, it's got to be revenue neutral, so somebody's got to pay for it.
No, the rate doesn't vary. It's just a credit.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a credit. It says, hey, I'll sweat a little more in the summer if I have to. I'll be a little cold. And I'll hook up my hot water heater as well. So they've got it down here under activities and strategies, residential load management products, water heater, HVAC, et cetera.
I think I believe I'm talking about something different than that. That's fine. I'm talking about more of a plan to get the residential customer involved.
You're talking about awareness, and education.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we need to insert a first step of developing a plan that covers, in this case, you'd hand this off to the utility commission. The utility commission would come up before starting into this with a plan, hopefully as simple as possible, but one that captures the range of what's going to happen, including down deep enough in the detail to make sure it's crystal clear where we're heading.
I agree. I agree with Mr.
Rather
Shanks.
than trying to design that now.
Right.
Now, I was trying to capture that as part of the activity.
Yeah.
What we already have an energy efficiency program.
And we also
Is
have
that the same thing you all were talking about? An energy efficiency program?
Yeah, this
Or
is
is that some overlap?
I want to expand it
I know
more.
what they-
This would be a different product.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got several demand dampening programs out here, but we need to organize them in an order that we know which ones we're talking about.
so then.
Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
We also already have a peak shedding program, which the schools are involved in. They haven't taken advantage of yet, but they're involved in. And
Well, you know, and that's great. I mean, I asked about that earlier when we had a joint school board meeting, and we come to the understanding that there are thermostats that aren't programmable or aren't used.
yeah,
And that's just an opportunity. I mean, I think that's a huge number that can
It
help
is.
with the program and can save them money.
right.
So we need to catalog all of the appropriate equipment changes or incentives that the utility can give, or equipment changes that the customers can give, the consumers can come up with, to see if we can work on this combination of actions that will reduce this coincidental peak.
So
that
I'd suggest
Okay, well, that's what it says.
inserting a line.
Right here.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, put it right there.
Okay, so you want, give us the wording, Mr.
Well,
King.
I'd say develop a plan for approval by the utility commission that provides a strategy for covering a whole range of energy efficiency actions on the part of customers, from residential to industrial.
Okay, so but then are we modifying this recommendation, which is focused just on coincidental peak demand?
Well,
Yeah,
we
I
have,
think this is focused on the
The 1CP and
the
5.
1CP.
1 CP, right.
or the 5.
Yeah, it could be either one.
All right,
You
so-
don't want to use the term energy efficiency, I believe, from what I just heard,
that'll be
because
confusing.
when you use that term, everybody's thinking about a different kind of an animal there.
This is all about.
They're kind of two different things.
This is all about peak demand.
This is about.
Peak demand. All right, so
demand.
let's get, it's not hard. We want a coordinated effort here,
She just
right?
she just typed it in.
All right, you got it? You're so good. Develop a strategic plan for, but who's it
Peak
for?
peak demand management.
Peak demand management for whom?
Residential, commercial, and industrial clients,
For
which I
all
think they're
customers.
already,
For all utility customers?
For all classes.
in public,
Okay.
and publishing.
Customer classes, that's good.
Customer classes, perfect. Danville Utilities? Is this the commission will approve? Okay. All right. We all right? All right, and then, okay. All right, and then residential load management
I
products,
would
you're
make
gonna
the
leave
chair
that?
of the
Is that
Danville
good?
Utility Commission responsible for that.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about this peak demand. Is that going to be within 1 to 2 years, or how soon are you going to develop this plan? How soon can the commission get this plan going?
I'm glad this is almost over.
To get it,
Stay with me a minute more, Mr. Smith, we're going to get you there. How soon can this plan be developed by the commission?
Can you put after power supply, the word consultant should go there where it says person, office responsible?
Right
Is
here
that
under
right?
power supply consultant.
Is
right
that, should
here.
that be
Yeah.
consultant?
Yes.
Power supply consultant.
Harrison.
Right there.
6 months.
All right, in 6 months, can you get it done?
I don't know, can you?
Can you get a plan developed in 6 months? By the end of the year?
Bill?
I'm fine with it.
All right, let's
You're
put
the
it in there,
chairman.
6 months.
Yeah, and I think that would be
Is it going to
important.
cost you any money to develop this plan? Do you
I'm
know?
going to be the chairman, do you?
How much is it going to cost?
Consultant fees, possibly 25,000, rough guess.
25,000
Rough
in
guess.
consulting fees? Add that in.
You're lucky.
Okay.
What
All right.
about the 100 up there? What is that for?
That was the residential load management?
What is that going to be spent on? Is that for rebates or?
That's for the actual design of the program.
Okay.
So that
you
should say
actually,
residential load management design.
Design.
we really need to, it's about designing. It's about designing
actually pretty
residential
cool.
load
I mean, now
management.
that we've
Okay, so
got
we'll
the-
put that in front of that. Design,
Stuff to the house.
not there, not there.
It turns
Not the word,
devices off and on.
it's going to be
Computer
on the
up to air
verb, so put it in
conditioning.
front of residential load management.
not what?
Design a residential load management.
Choose the house to
Don't
do it.
take the whole thing out, just put it in front of R. Design a residential load management program.
Jason, you
That's
talking
right.
about hiring a
Down.
consultant to do this?
After management, put program,
We could do it in-house, but
right before the call.
I would rather seek expert advice.
Yeah.
All right, on C, coincidental peak demand program management. Any more changes? All righty, move it, save often. And we're going to go to D. And D has to do with power generation facilities locally. So take a good look at this. This is a couple things could happen with the consultant fairly soon, but this is a long-term project.
Well, on the previous one, we had local generation. Isn't that an overlap, and that on the one we're just getting ready to look at?
No. This is base load power.
3 to 5 years, $1 million.
You may not necessarily have the same unit for peaking that you have for base load. I think.
I think we're looking at it as the same, though, aren't we? We're talking about the same thing?
What's the question?
The previous one, we had a local generation RFP, and then this next one we're looking at is the same thing.
That's a typo.
Are you having
The generation would help with the 1 CPs and 5 CPs. They would help with part of your demand reduction
So
program.
it's the same, just related, right?
Right.
Right.
Any more questions
Stand
on D?
D, the timeline can't be 2 months.
All right.
We're going to spend 2 months hiring the power consultant.
But that would actually be possibly 2 months from the time you hire them afterwards. So,
Okay.
So would you say 4 months?
yeah, Mr. Donahue raised this, said 4.
Is it conceivable that we're in a 3 to 5 year cycle on a select and build, or is it more like 5 to 7? Are we in position permitting wise to be able to move that quickly?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm hearing, 2 years of permitting, 1 year of construction, based on the kind of plant, but possibly 2 years of construction, so 3 to 4 years.
And just another question, do we have gas capacity to potential sites, or are we going to also be in the business of building additional pipeline?
Building pipeline, a small pipeline would be in the cards,
A small pipeline?
yeah.
Okay.
Are you right now referring to what may be in the works with AMP or something else that we may be involved with ourselves?
The idea here would be to issue RFP to see what proposals we would get.
To do it ourselves.
AMP would be likely one of the proposals.
Right. Appalachian actually is building two, is that correct?
Dominion is.
Well, I think Appalachian's got some going too.
Dominion's converting a lot of their coal units to gas very quickly.
Comments, changes on D? All right. E. This one has to do with the organizational structure of the Danville Utility Commission. So I want you to look at the wording, look at the future statement, some of the things that you brought up last time. You did not say skill set. That was a P, and that's in the second bullet. So I want you to look at that. Your conversation was around that, but you never said those words. So that's a summary of your words on that one.
Somebody said.
Well, this is another one of those things that we would need to rely heavily on the consultant, I believe. I mean, are we to research? It would seem to me we're not the ones that want to research other localities that have similar arrangements with their utility governing body.
Actually pretty easy to do.
We're going to send people out.
Yeah.
I think you could get a lot of it by email or public records.
So we know the reason why you've listed these localities, they do have independent, okay. I didn't realize that many would.
Is Bedford's independent? No. I didn't think so.
Until we do that research, it's hard to come up with any answers like that.
Can you leave it as it is? And you're looking at 6 to 12 months. All right. And right now, there's not a cost associated, so you can always modify it. All right, but that's your goal. Any other comments on E? That's your intent, to go after that. Okay. All right, then let's go to F. F deals with the transfer of funds policy. This one probably has a few more pieces that you might want to add, but you may have to wait.
I really think it's just a cut dry, bringing that policy back to the Utility Commission and reviewing it in detail.
So should the Utility Commission be involved in this?
Utility Commission or City Council?
Or is
Well,
it the City Council?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think that policy was approved initially by the Utility Commission. Am I wrong?
No,
Council established the policy.
right.
Without the recommendation of the Utility Commission, then that's another reason why it should come to the Utility Commission.
So would the first activity be to complete the study of the transfer of funds policy and then make a recommendation to City Council?
I think, frankly, this is just my opinion, the more appropriate course of action would be to ask the City Council to review their policy and report back to the Utility Commission, not in a, superior subordinate role, but report back to the utility commission if it
That's where we'll,
feels that policy is appropriate.
What bothers me about that policy is it's a policy that builds in, never decreasing. Every time it increases, it just raises the roof for another increase. It will never go down.
Right.
And it's clearly stated in the policy that it will never go down.
Well, that's why we
For
got
instance-
here freeze.
So that's what we need to look
Should
at.
have studied it.
Okay.
By city council.
The utility commission did approve the methodology of increasing.
No.
Didn't it? Or made recommendations.
We were,
We recommend
we were told, we were notified of the change in the calculation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We never voted on that. We didn't have anything to do with that. It's not our, we don't have that authority.
so I think Mr. King suggested that the first step might be to request city council to review the current policy, existing policy.
Yep.
Okay, so, right.
That's
right.
appropriate.
And would it be, the request will come from the Utilities Commission?
Right.
So that person will respond to the Utilities Commission? And do you want to do that when?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
When will that become part of your agenda discussion? 1 month, 2 months? How soon you want to get that on the, started?
I would say we probably should put that out a couple of 3 or 4 months. We've got plenty to do in the next 2 or 3 months. Just
Yeah, there's
sitting
nothing-
here thinking of the agendas we're getting ready to embark on here for May, June, July.
4 months, 3
And
months?
August will be all right. We can do that in August.
Practically speaking, it needs to be done in time to affect the 2017 budget, but it's not necessary to be too much ahead of that process. So August would be,
That gives you, yeah, you can,
Put in August. Okay.
okay.
but I don't know that the utility commission ought to delay making that request. It's a pretty easy request to make.
Could do that in, or we could do that in the next meeting.
If you want to do that, we can do that. If you want it, the sooner the better, so you can be prepared for whatever.
I mean,
All right.
why do we need a request from the utility commission to do this?
Why do you need it?
Why, yeah, why?
I think
Why
to
can't
put-
we just say, ask city council to review the present policy?
Well, I think putting a little formality around it is helpful.
Well, it didn't seem to be any formality when it was adopted.
Well, the formality was retained by the council. It was certainly formal.
Formal
It was-
by council.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, if the utility commission wishes it to be done,
The bottom line.
The question,
I just think,
The bottom line.
for me, to go into a council work session and say, hey, the utility commission would like for you to look at your fund transfer, holds less weight than, say, a formal letter from the chairman of the utility commission stating the reasons why this would be done and asking for it to be done within a certain period of time. I'm just suggesting that formality would be appropriate.
Would the utility commission, who would generate the list of research questions for the study that's also an action item up there?
Would that be the Utility Commission?
I'm asking.
Who do you think, to generate the
Right.
list of research questions?
I think frankly, I'd leave that to the council.
So let's put city council
well,
I mean,
going back up to the recommendation, which is study the transfer of funds policy. To me, we could just do that. You know, I don't, you know, I mean, after it's done, the study is done, whatever, we share it with the utility commission and whomever we want to share it with. But the strategic recommendation is study the transfer of funds policy. So I don't know why we wouldn't just say, okay, that's
Did we
good, let's
use-
do
I
that.
I just think that it would be in the best interest of both groups if this be, at least an attempt be made for this not to be an adversarial
How long has this policy
activity.
been in existence?
Well, we didn't have a formal policy
2
until
years, 1 year.
5 years ago, and that was considered a deficiency. So we put a formal policy in City Council's financial policies, which the auditors said that was very good, the bond writers said that was very good. And they're not passing judgment on the policy per se, they're just saying
Was
there
that
should
2
be.
years ago? Was that at the request of the utility commission, or the
No.
city just do it?
The city
Came
just
from
did
the
it.
manager's office.
That's what I'm saying.
Let me-
The city just do it.
What's your hurry, John? I mean, it's not going to be that much difference. And I
Pardon?
think it ought to be formally requested from utilities to do it. It's all part of these recommendations. It's no big deal, we'll do
It's
it.
not part of the recommendation. The recommendation is study the transfer of funds.
Well, who's going to do the study?
I would-
Council's not going to do that study.
That's right. That's why I
Well,
think,
Just play this out a few moves,
They sure are.
and you do the study, and you say it should be cut down to $3 million. Then you're throwing that to the city council.
City council needs to make the
Yeah,
request.
and
city council
utilities
saying-
doesn't balance the budget at the end of the year, or try to.
Yeah,
or
the
pay
city
bills.
council's
City
saying,
council
okay,
has
how
to.
do you propose balancing the general fund budget?
he's coming
And
close.
You don't want the utility commission to be put in a situation of saying, well, that's your problem.
Yeah.
It just doesn't help the customer.
The buck stops with council, not utility commission.
I agree,
So
that's why I say.
one of the questions that you've asked is who actually is going to do the study? Do you need to secure another resource or support system to do
City
it?
council will make that decision. We can't make it for them.
All right, so that would be but the recommendation or the letter that would come from from the utilities is
We can
to
request a
study.
review of the current policy by city council. We can also, the other question would be, freezing the current contributions until the study is complete is also a recommendation.
That's fair.
And is it satisfactory for it to just be on this document, Joe?
If you want to make that a part of your request, please freeze the current transfer. I think that would be appropriate.
So take out the development list of the research questions.
Yeah, what's that?
Do you
Strike
want
that.
to take
Yeah,
that
we'll
just
take
row,
that.
just add to that row, highlight the row and just click your right mouse and delete, it'll go away.
Yeah, they'll do it.
We can produce a resolution that covers that. And it'll be plain to city council I think what the utilities commission's intention is going to be.
Okay?
It's not a big problem.
Okay.
Rock on.
And you can say something about, you can make suggestions, I guess, especially about never decreasing. It's going to have to decrease if industry starts.
Well,
Take that
remember
I'm not willing to say that yet.
the rate consultant said for every $1 million that you reduce that transfer, you're talking about an average 1/10 of a percent on the utility rate. So it doesn't have the huge impact that you might anticipate. It does have a huge impact on the general fund.
Yeah. In terms of total revenues.
Okay. Anything else? on that one?
That's good.
Then your last one is G, and this is directly related to the hometown report. There were some recommendations in that report that y'all wanted to discuss a little bit more in detail.
Good.
Now, this is ongoing. Anytime you see ongoing in a plan of work like this, it gives me pause. I'm going to just suggest to you that it become, if it's really going to be ongoing, it become part of your agenda, that you're attacking each piece of that report in a very logical and organized manner, regularly. All right,
Here's just
changes.
a little discussion here. Is this Danville Utilities operation, or are we talking Danville's electric utility?
electric utility.
And let's add that in there.
Well, and some of the changes that were recommended were customer service oriented, so that would affect the other utilities as well.
Well, the only reason I mention that is this is something that does need a person responsible for it, in my opinion, which is, I think, where Martha was driving. So depending on what we're focusing on, we currently don't have a director for the electric business. You're in the interim role for all the utilities. So I'm just wondering where the buck stops on this.
This would be the responsibility of the director of utilities.
So that would be the Danville Utilities Director.
When we get one.
The recommendation, when we get one.
Danville Utilities Director, right after.
There's another one that I think we missed,
Thank you, Gene.
rate stabilization. Was the one I thought was on that list.
Not, let's see if it's included in some of the others, because it was not listed as one of your recommendations that you wanted to bring to council based on the last meeting.
I thought we even discussed that rate stabilization was kind of what got us in trouble. And maybe I dreamed that. But I mean, when we went through the rate stabilization with the, what was Prairie State, anticipation of Prairie State, that was a big mistake. Under collecting for a period.
Yeah, and I raised that question, was that the same thing? And I believe Jason said no, it was more of a known fact.
Right. We would buy blocks of power and lock in at those prices for future years up to, I think, years 2022.
Right.
And we use some of those savings to now rather than later.
Would that reflect in the PCA being stable? Is that where the stabilization would come?
We could use it towards the PCA, or it could possibly affect rates.
Or cut rate? So,
Yeah, you're right. I remember having that discussion, and I think we, at that point, when we did have that discussion, I think we threw that in with power supply consultant. I thought that's what we did.
power supply, okay.
That's right.
That's where you wanted it.
Okay. Gentlemen, you have,
Well, let's follow up on that.
About 50% of our power is bought from projects, and about 50% is bought through either blocks or off the market.
So do you want to, in strategic recommendation B, outline, we have rates are stabilized under the future for the current situation? Is that satisfactory?
You're talking about B?
we're looking at recommendation B.
Under future. Rates are stable.
Again, that's more of a, under the rate consultant than the power consultant, would you think, or not? It's overlap?
It's a mixture of both.
Okay.
Some power consultants are also rate consultants. So
So if they could look at that and think it's feasible and wise, we could consider it then.
Well, given that 75% of our cost is the cost to purchase power, that's the bulk of our variation right now.
Is there anything change? Do we need any changes in B? Everybody got it? We're okay with it? Okay. You have 7 recommendations that this group has looked at and reviewed. The last several pages in this document deal with your SWOT analysis and how we tried to take each one of the proposed recommendations, and the X in the box means that if you're successful in addressing that recommendation, then you are dealing with either a strength, or you're dealing with one of the weaknesses or threats or one of the opportunities. And so that's how you can use that grid. You have the beginnings of something, a plan of work in a format that you can track. You can watch and see, you can use it to track your documents. If I were to watch you proceed with this, I would definitely encourage you to change out anything that says 2 to 3 years or 3 to 4 months. and actually put an exact month in there. Because it depends on when you open the plan as to what that looks like on you. And to get as many specific individual names as people responsible so that you know who's actually carrying the ball. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for inviting me to go through this with you. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Martha, you did a great job.
Appreciate it. Does anyone have anything else before we vote?
This one, see.
I'm going to ask for a roll call vote for,
We're voting on what we just did.
we are going to move to take these recommendations as we have edited them today.
But
and
this isn't
to
the same as that.
forward them to City Council for their consideration.
They broke it into,
Are you okay with that?
I'm just still unclear. We're going to vote this document we did today, not this. This is a little different. I mean,
No, we're voting on what we just went over,
Okay.
these recommendations.
yeah. Because
Okay? We're voting for all of them, and as we have edited them
Edited and
today, they
amended.
will be presented as our recommendations to City Council for their action. And we're going to do this by roll call. Ms. Holly?
Dr. Miller?
aye.
Mr. Donahue?
yes.
Mr. Turpin?
Yes.
Mr. Gilstrap?
Aye.
Mr. Shanks?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. So the recommendations have been unanimously adopted, and they will be forwarded to City Council. Does anyone else have any comments to make as we close today? Anybody have anything to say?
I'll miss seeing you on Monday afternoons.
I know.
It only took us 2 months longer than we expected. 3 months.
Yes, sir, Mr. King.
I just want to express our appreciation for your time and your engagement, your hard work. I think if you had understood that this would run all the way through April,
You told us February.
yeah, you might have felt a little different, but I think that additional time was well spent.
Well spent.
Thank everybody for participating. It was a rather long process, but
And
I believe everybody benefited from it. The Utility Commission, I believe City Council did, and I'm hopefully the ratepayers and the citizens did too.
Yeah, I would like to thank the staff of the Utilities Department for providing us all the information that we requested in a timely manner, and also the public and our local industry for their thoughtful input during this process.
I'd like to echo that. It's pretty eye-opening to see, especially from some of the testimony we got from people who brought in as to how this system works. I'm still not sure I understand it all, but certainly understand better than I used to.
It's a complicated business.
It's complicated. But thank you all.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say too that after getting into it, it is very complex, and especially since the deregulation took effect. And I hope the public is aware of what goes into trying to project and cover the demands. It's really involved, and it's easy to second guess people, armchair quarterback, but when you have to make the decisions and look ahead for the future, sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you wish you could have done it a little better. But I think the staff did a good job, as we're going to see, I think. And it certainly did a good job in providing the material and the data to help us try to understand this. So, Mike.
Anyone else? We stand adjourned.